Hello everyone, this is Todd Blankenship with RocketStock.com, and today we're looking at our free 4K volumetric light pack. In this pack, you'll find 14 unique volumetric light overlays, as well as 2 free dust elements. As you'll see, you can use these elements in Premiere, Final Cut, and After Effects to create a lot of really cool looks. Let's dive in. So let's start with using these elements in Premiere. So we have this clip, looks like a grandson and a grandfather perhaps in a guitar workshop. We're going to use elements to kind of add a nice dreamy sort of volumetric look to all of this footage. So let's take our clip here and we'll drag it down to the new item button to create a new sequence. And let's go ahead and import our elements. So I'm going to right click, go to import, and I'm going to import our volumetric elements. And here we have all kinds of different stuff. We have subtle kind of dust elements. Some of them move, some of them are a bit more still. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to find one that looks like a good match. So I like at the beginning of this clip, there's this kind of little transition moment. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull that out. Another thing to note is these elements are 4K. So if your clip is HD, you'll want to downscale it. So what I do there is I just right click on the element clip and right here, scale to frame size. And there we go. And now we need to change the overlay mode of this element. So I'm going to click on it. I'm going to go up to Effect Controls. And over here on opacity, I'm going to drop this drop down menu and let's change it to screen. So there we go. Now we get a nice little transition effect there. And now I want to add some other elements, kind of maybe a beam shooting in this way, kind of make it look like there's some sunlight coming in through a window. So I'm going to look at this element right here, number 8, side beam shake. It's kind of a flickery sort of, to me it looks like natural sunlight kind of filtering in through some trees. So I'm going to just select a moment I like and let's drag it down into our sequence. We're going to extend it the length of the shot and we need to change the size of this one as well. So right click it, scale to frame size, and I'm going to go up to Effect Controls and change it to screen. Another thing is I want the light to be coming in at an angle. So we're going to click on the clip here. I'm going to go up to motion here, and I'm going to go ahead and change the rotation of the clip. Okay, and so that's starting to look a little bit better. Now you can see we get a box. And the way to fix that box is we're going to select the element, and here in the opacity tab, we're going to click this pen tool right here. And it's easier to do this if you zoom out a little bit, so I'm going to go down to 50, and then I'm going to click on this pen tool in the opacity tab here, and I'm just going to draw kind of a shape around that element. So now we've cut that out and we can go ahead and click on the clip again, and right here in mask feather we're going to turn that up quite considerably. Okay, so now we've lost that kind of that box from where the edges of the frame was, and we can still have this kind of natural looking fall off. Right here we have this element called the beam kit. And what this is, it's just a beam kind of popping out, and I'm going to take the bigger one. There's two. There's a smaller one and a bigger one. I'm going to take the bigger one here, and I'm going to start it when it's almost to its brightest point. I do kind of like the fade up effect, and I'm going to drag that in as well. Okay, and we need to change this one to screen. And I'm going to scale it down by clicking on the clip, going up to Effect Controls, and scaling it down like that. And I'm also going to do a very similar thing and do a rotation on it. And let's find a nice spot. Maybe right there. And as you can see, we got the box again, so we're going to go ahead and just mask that out. So I'm going to go out to 50%, select the pen tool, and just draw a little shape. And feather it out. And another thing that I want to do is I want to add in some dust. So up here we have a dust folder, and as you can see there's a more subtle dust, and we have a much more intense kind of swirly dust. But one thing that's really neat is you can actually use these beam elements as a luma mat for the dust. So I'm going to put the swirly dust element on top of the footage here, and again it's 4K, so we're going to scale it to frame size by right clicking. And now we want to switch it to screen as well. So here you go. Now we have the dust in here, and it's way too much. It's just way too much dust. It doesn't look realistic at all. So I'm going to take this big beam here, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and I'm going to drag up to a new layer. So now I have a copy. And what I can do is I can click on our dust layer here, go over to Effects, and we're going to bring up a track matte. And you take the track matte, drag it to that clip, and now we're going to switch the matte to the video layer directly above it. So here we have, this is layer 4, we're going to change the matte to layer 5. But right now it's responding to the alpha. So you can see where we cut out, we use that mask on the opacity to create that beam. But what we really want it to do is respond to the brightness. So we're going to change composite using from alpha to a matte luma. And so now you can see it's very subtle, but those dust elements are only in the bright part of the beam. And then now I want to fine tune the dust itself. So I'm going to go to a Lumetri effect. So in our effects, we're going to bring up Lumetri, drag that onto our dust layer. And I'm going to come over here to curves. And I just want to drop down the darks a little bit. I kind of want the dust to be a little more subtle here. And then I want it to be a few really bright pieces of dust. So I'm going to take the highlights here and just move them up. And then the last thing I always do is just add a color correction over top of all of it, just to kind of merge everything together. So what I did here was just a Lumetri effect, and I just put a very slight contrast curve over everything. And it looks a lot more natural. And in Final Cut, it's going to be a very similar process. So we have this clip here. It's kind of like something you'd see in a makeup commercial or something like that. So we're going to use one of our elements to kind of accentuate that. And for that, I like this clip right here, this side beams clip. Just some kind of beams running up the side of the clip there. And we're going to just drag that on top. And I'm just going to trim down here on the end of the clip. And now I'm going to select our element clip. And up here in the compositing tab, we will switch the blend mode from normal to screen as well. Now we have that. And I feel like the beams are a little bit too small. And what's nice is since they're 4K, we have a little bit of extra wiggle room to kind of do whatever we want with these elements. So I'm going to go ahead and scale it up a decent amount. And that looks a little bit better to me. And I want to move our beam elements down a little bit. So I'm going to come down here to this corner and select our transform tool and just move the element down just like that. And there you go. Looks pretty cool. All right, so now let's look at how we can achieve a similar result in After Effects. Here we have this clip of a drummer here, and one thing you'll notice, the clip is moving, okay? So the camera isn't still here, which for these kind of cases, you're gonna wanna bring it into After Effects so you can do some motion tracking. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drag this clip down here to the new comp button right here. And so now we have our comp with the drummer clip in it. And what we need to do now is track this footage. So I'm gonna select this footage. I'm gonna go over here to the tracker, and I'm gonna select Track Motion. And in this case, I'm not very worried about rotation as far as the track goes because there's not a lot of rotation to the camera movement. So I'm just going to leave it on position only. And then I'm going to go over here and right click, go to New, Null Object. And I'm going to set the target to that null object. Make sure it's set to the null that you just created. Hit OK. Now I'm going to go over to Options. And I'm going to change this right here from Adapt Feature to Stop Tracking. I'm going to set it to 85%. And what that's going to do is anytime the tracker is less than 85% confident about the tracking point that it's tracking, it's going to stop tracking instead of just keep going. This way we can nudge it back into place ourselves and keep the track going. So I'm going to find a spot in the footage where I can place this tracking point. And for a tracking point here, I'm going to try this little screw kind of looking thing right here. And then I'm going to select Track Forward right here. Okay, there we go. Now we have our track. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Apply. X and Y is cool. Hit OK. So now we have a null object tracked to that hi-hat stand there. So for this shot, I like the element Big Dust Beam. And again, let's keep in mind that these are 4K, so if you have a 1080 clip, you'll have to scale it down some. And we need it to be a little bit bigger than the edges of frame just because of the movement of the camera. So something like that should work. And let's change it to screen mode. We're going to click right here on the overlay mode and change it to screen. So there we go. Now the dust is in the shot, and we're going to parent that clip by using the pick whip tool here and drag it over to the null object that has our tracking data on it. I'm going to go ahead and turn on motion blur by clicking this button right here and then clicking it for this layer as well. And here's what we got. So I hope you enjoy these free elements. I hope you're able to use them to create some really cool stuff. And be sure to head over to RocketStock.com, check out some more of our other freebie packs and video element packs as well.